Good morning, Harris County, and wherever else you are watching us from. Welcome to the Homegrown Lecture Series for September. It is September 1st already. Today, we are lucky to have Brandi Keller, who will be covering all about mint. And next month, it will be proper pruning in the landscape, and I will be covering that topic. So, don't forget about our podcast. We are available wherever you download podcasts, whether that's Apple Podcasts, Spotify, you name it, we're out there. So by all means, give us a listen. And newsletters come out at the beginning of the month. September should be on its way here shortly. So without any further ado, I am going to send it over to Brandi Keller. Brandi, it is all yours.
All right. Good morning. Thank you, Paul. He said it was September 1st. I kind of knew it, but it's a whole different thing when it really sets in. I guess we're waiting for these temperatures to cool. So, welcome back today. I will be talking about mint. He already introduced me, but I am Brandi Keller with Harris County Extension Service. I'm one of the horticulture agents. And we'll just get straight into this. So generally what we're going to cover today is we're going to touch on the family and genus, the growing culture and just cultural conditions. We'll look at some varieties, which will of course be the highlight of the presentation because they're so beautiful. Harvesting and storing, and then even though I put using at the back, I've kind of sprinkled that in among the varieties. So we'll see how to use some of these mints along the way. All right, so first of all, mint is in the family Lamiaceae, or it can be said Lamiaceae. I put that up there because sometimes, we just take for granted people know how to pronounce these things, but this family is very large. There's more than 230 genera and definitely more than 7,000 species, and it probably keeps growing. The mint family, the mint genus is Mentha, but I'm going to take a look a little bit closer at some of these, the family of Lamiaceae that grow all around the world. They do consist mostly of herbs, but there are some trees and shrubs in there. There's a lot of characteristics, but the top three are that they are generally aromatic. The stems are often square and just a little hairy, and then they have opposite leaves. So even taking a look here, you can see there's tons of herbs, oregano, rosemary, bee balm, thyme, lavender, but then in the upper right, there's the ground cover ajuga, and then of course with trees and shrubs, vitex and beautyberry fall into it. So it's it's a very diverse family. Looking a little closer at the genus Mentha, they are perennial, hardy perennials. We're here in Houston, Texas, but mints grow generally from zones 4 to 9, 9A. I forgot to mention, if you can put in the chat some of your favorite mints, and then we'll just take a look at that a little bit later. So just enter in there if you have a favorite mint or a favorite mint to grow. They are aromatic herbs, mainly used for culinary reasons. Generally originated from the Mediterranean, maybe not all of them. In the spring, they will have a flush of growth, new stalks coming up from dormancy. If you're in an area where they might grow a little bit year round, that's still generally the major growth period. And then after it sends out flowers, they tend to send out those runners that will root, and we'll talk about those a little bit later. For the pollinators, mints produce these tall flower spikes, so they're extremely popular with pollinators. This picture on the left, we're not going to go through it all, but you know, there are definitely patterns of that mint family. Even with those flowers, they are bilaterally symmetrical, so if you cut it down the center, they will mirror the other side. I kept seeing like a turtle in this picture below, the depiction of the flower with the seeds. I keep seeing like a cartoon turtle head, so I had to put that in there. I don't I don't know. I find it hilarious. Put some eyeballs on there. You see it? You see it now? It's definitely a cartoon character. All right. Oh man. You know, sometimes you just gotta do things that keep you sane, right? So getting into planting and growing, mints prefer full sun, part sun, especially down where we are around Houston. They can take some afternoon shade. That does not mean that mints do not grow in shade. It really depends on your situation. And sometimes you can grow them in full sun and shade, and you'll just get a different time of crop. They prefer well-drained soil, but honestly, they do pretty well in not so hot soils too. But in general, they like moist soil. This is not the plant to let dry out like rosemary. However, be careful not to get too much water because then it promotes root and leaf diseases. The mints we're going to talk about today are it's really averaging around 2 feet tall. I think there's one that may get 3. There's a couple that are a lot smaller. And when you plant these, you still want to account for air circulation. So, you know, plant or space appropriately. So when they grow to full size, you know, they're not going to be crowded. In general, you know, 18 inches apart. So cultural practices to follow with mints. Number one, do not over fertilize. You can apply a slow release, complete fertilizer in the spring. If you're using compost, you know, maybe just no more than about an inch of that. Really too much fertilizer and even too much water can really reduce the essential oil quality in those leaves, and it promotes disease, and one of those is rust. Mulching, like everything, to conserve moisture, especially in hot areas. And it says can cut to the ground. So mint is one of those things where, one of those plants where you can actually cut that to the ground. And when I say to the ground, I would say about an inch above the ground. You can do that any time, and then it'll send out a new flush of leaves. You know, like whereas basil, if you do that, you want to kind of time it. But this you can do any time of year. Definitely if it gets cold enough where you have a winter, you know, cut it an inch to the ground before the winter. You can still do that, you know, along the Gulf Coast too. But that keeps the plant growing nice, healthy leaves, and just helps the overall health of it. Propagation. So generally with mints, we're not looking to, you know, how do I propagate this? It's usually how do I get rid of it? But, you know, I'm sure there's still those of you out there that would be interested in propagating. Of course, seeds are available. Really be sure that you buy from reputable sources, just to make sure you get the varieties that you're looking for, because mint hybridizes among each other very easily. So just choose a really good source. You can purchase transplants from garden centers, or maybe someone else had potted some up. Cuttings, what I didn't mention is runners, so I'm going to kind of put that under cuttings. So we'll talk about runners on the next one, but if you can find some of them under the soil that are already starting to put out like those vertical stems, then you can just plant those about 1 inch deep. And then dividing in a pot. And again, we're going to talk about this in the next slide, but you want to divide about every 3 to 4 years. You want to refresh that plant, give it new soil. Those roots grow so much that it can really get pot bound. And if a plant gets pot bound, then you have a higher ratio of roots compared to soil. I did talk with a master gardener, and this is what she does whenever a plant gets pot bound. She just removes those roots from the pot. She slices a knife, all around, as if you're kind of doing a pie, and then you just pull out those sections to either pot up, give someone, or throw out if you just have too much. Mint roots, you do not have to worry about being rough with them. I am very violent with my mint roots. It doesn't even matter. They're gonna be fine. So if it's in the ground, you can even use a shovel and just hack it with a shovel. Either dig out the whole thing and then slice it up with a shovel, or just take bits off around the ends. Just be sure to add fresh soil around wherever you take it out. Mint's pretty hardy, but we don't want to invite any, any trouble that we don't need. So I talked about the runners. With mint, so it can grow in size around the base and growing up, or it can send out these runners that really expand its spread horizontally. That is my hand right there. And those are runners that I had just found probably over this past weekend at a garden center. Those mint plants were already sending out runners. But again, this is the season for it, right? They've probably already put off their flowers. And they put out these really long runners. Well, anywhere that runner sits on the ground, it can grow roots below, and then it can grow stems above. So that is why it can be extremely aggressive, and in some instances invasive. When you are digging anything up, be sure not to throw it in your compost bin or leave pieces laying around, your bed, because they will just straight up root wherever they are. And then the sign says the only way to control mint is to move. So I've heard that. I just feel like that is a super expensive way to deal with mint. So we're going to look at maybe some more affordable options so you don't have to just move. So the biggest thing with mint is to set your boundaries. It's pretty common knowledge that it spreads, but if you can set those boundaries from the beginning, then you're going to reduce some issues. You can either do them in containers above the ground, just regular container pots, or you can sink those containers in the ground. This is a clay pot. Maybe that's a bit too heavy to sink into the ground, although it would be really good too because it allows that water to pass through. But what this is depicting is that you can use a tall container. It doesn't even have to have a bottom, and it might be even better if it doesn't, because water can drain through much easier. You won't have to worry about those runners going that deeply in a tall pot. And then bury that container, but leave like a couple inches, 2 or 3 inches of a lip up above. And that helps just separate, that plant from the surrounding soil. If you want to plant it in raised beds, then good luck. I mean, it's really not recommended for raised beds, but there are people that really love mint. So, whatever works for them. That master gardener that I talked to a little bit earlier that you saw, she said she would prefer to have mint than lawn. So she just mows right over, a part of her yard that has mint growing up. And especially if you're using it, I guess it's always good to have new fresh growth. And so troubleshooting, yes, it can be really aggressive, but it doesn't mean that it looks really great all the time. There are a few things that you can troubleshoot. One being leggy or just basically lackluster. That can originate from a few different things. One being pot bound, so repot it. Too much fertilizer, we talked about that. Do not apply too much. It could just be that it needs to be refreshed, that it needs to be cut all the way back and then allowed to grow out again. If it's brown, it sounds obvious, but maybe it isn't always. It needs water. Maybe you're going a little too light on the water. And third, rust. So I think there's a link that Paul will put in, but mint can get a rust when the leaves are too wet. So what does that mean? It is avoidable. So just know when to water and allow those leaves to dry or use drip irrigation. But it'll be like this on that link that he sends. If you open it up afterwards, it has some good pictures. It's like this dusty, I don't know, like orange, brownish. They call them pustules, but it just looks like, spots on the underside of the leaf. It can also cause pale shoots or leaves to die or drop off. There's no real cure for that. You'll just have to remove the plant. I believe in that link there's something they talk about to deal with that. And then aphids, I mean, typically aphids do not affect mint too much, but it can happen. Aphids love everything. So, again, just monitor your plants. If it's a small infestation, it's not going to hurt the plant, rinse them off. If it's a heavy, you can use some insecticidal soap. Companion planting. So because of the aggressive nature of it, this companion planting would typically be in the pots or the sunken pots. The things that it does well being planted with, it's typically because mint will either deter some kind of pest or bring something in that helps control that pest. So any kind of the brassicas, the broccoli, kale, Brussels sprouts. There's some people that may even take dried leaves, or if you have a bunch of mint, they'll just put the leaves down around their brassicas. So really they're encouraging insects that are going to feed on the pests on these different plants. And the no do not plant together are mainly herbs, and a lot of that is due to just different raw water requirements. If you look at all of these, none of them really like to have real moist soil. All right, we're almost to the beautiful pictures. So harvesting increases growth. It also, if you have new leaves and new stems, they're actually more flavorful. So it's really good to just prune those out, even if you're not using them, just to keep a healthy plant. You can harvest those leaves and stems throughout the season. Just like with many herbs, you do not want your mint to flower. Go to full flower. You want to keep that deadheaded to really preserve the integrity of those essential oils. The irony, though, is if you are drying leaves, that oil content for drying leaves is actually best when the flowers start to form. I should say when the flower stalk begins to form, but the flowers haven't actually opened yet. So if your intent is to dry the leaves, that is the best time to harvest. So storing mint, you can do it like a lot of other herbs. You can just store in a glass of water up to a week. I would probably still put that in the refrigerator. In the fridge, wrapped like in a damp towel and then in plastic, kind of like how you would do lettuce. Freeze the leaves in water. If you just freeze the leaves, period, not in water, it's not really going to fare well. So kind of do like with basil, just add it to water and then you have them year round, or, something definitely flavorful for, some ice water. And if you're drying them, definitely store in an airtight container. You can dry those either, a bunch wrapped up, hanging upside down, or spread on a screen. Dried really lasts up to about a year. And you'll know that it's not good if you, crumble it and you really can't smell anything. If it still has a good scent, then you're good to go. All right, Paul, this is our opportunity. Did anyone have some favorites they wanted to share?
Yes, they did. Let me scroll through here. We had a peppermint.
Nice.
We had, let's see, Corsican mint.
Oh, yep.
What else? We had a couple of favorite spearmint, catmint, chocolate mint, and citrusy mint, and lemon balm.
Ah, yes.
And then we had another spearmint.
Yeah. Lemon balm is actually not a mint, but it definitely resembles one. I don't have any pictures of or we're not going to go over Corsican, but I actually found that in a nursery recently. So that's one of the smaller leaved ones. So yeah, you guys sound like you have a little bit of knowledge about some mints. All right, we're just going to go on and start talking about them. So here are some mints that we're going to cover. At the end, I'm going to show this picture again. So try to practice. We're going to have a little quiz, at-home quiz, and see if you can identify any of these. All right, so I started out with spearmint. Those are the big guns. It is my favorite. It is considered some of the most popular mints, just because they are a little bit more, the flavor's tamer than spearmint. But Mentha spicata, it has lavender flowers, which I showed that one flower picture just 2 slides ago because we actually don't see many flowers of the mint here. So I wanted to kind of accentuate that. But lavender flowers, and these are lighter green, a little bit more rounded shape. 2 of the varieties that I recently saw in the nurseries were English and Kentucky Kernel. The English is identifiable from the other one because it has some red stems. These are really good for steeping to make tea. Really all around, really great uses, which we'll go into right here. Spearmint is one of the mints that are typically used for tabbouleh, and I thought I might have a link on that. I don't know. Paul will put that in if I do. This pairs really well with everything that you see on here: vegetables, lamb, other meats, tea, lemonade, and then of course the mint julep. Peppermint. So this is Mentha piperita. These flowers are pink, purple flowers, and they have a little bit, you're going to be able to tell the difference if you have them close by. You know, there's going to be more serration on the edges. They are going to have that dark stem. And then they're just a little bit more lance shaped, like it says. That X in the name, Mentha X piperita, means that it is a hybrid. So this is actually, peppermint's actually a hybrid between spearmint and what is called watermint. There's some debate that peppermint seeds do not germinate, but typically that would be true. It would be sterile, but you know, humans, they go in and they have to, you know, fiddle with chromosomes, and so they can actually get it to seed. I have a question for the viewers. I'm going to give you a list of countries, and I would like you to guess on the chat who is the top exporter of peppermint oil. So here are your choices: the UK, India, China, Germany, or the United States. So we'll get back to that in a minute. Go ahead and put in who is the top exporter of peppermint oil. All right, so going into some of its uses, it does differ from spearmint, as you can see from this list. You can still use it for beverages and desserts, but it's so potent that it really does well in medicines and cosmetics. And then this next slide just kind of puts those two together and shows you some differences. These are the two most cultivated varieties. These are the two that are commercially produced. Spearmint is definitely a little bit sweeter, more mild. Peppermint is stronger. But why is it stronger? Well, it all has to do with that menthol right there. The menthol is really an organic compound, and it gives it that really strong flavor. You can see it has 40% peppermint and spearmint is 0.5. I intuitively knew that I didn't prefer peppermint because I like to steep it in, I don't steep it in hot water like some do. I like to just let it soak in cold water for like a day. It gives it a really nice flavor to that water. But I've used peppermint before. Oh, it's not the same. It is not the same. It's because of that high menthol concentration. And on top of that, spearmint does have another chemical that, you know, gives it just a more palatable flavor. All right, Paul, so what is the guess? Who's the top exporter of peppermint oil?
We got I would say India was probably, we have an India, China, US.
China, US, yeah. It's all over the place.
Another India, US, and India. So I would say majority is probably India.
All right. Makes sense, right? It's not right. It's the United States.
Huh? Okay, so Caroline K said United States. We had an anonymous with US, and that was it. We only had 2 US. So
Yeah.
give yourself a pat on the back.
Yeah, there you go. There you go. Go out and have a spearmint, not peppermint drink. All right. I know when that was one fact I did not realize. So that took me by surprise too, and I knew it was going to trick you all. All right, so we're going to go on to chocolate mint. This is another one of my favorites, and I have a very personal reason why this is one of my favorites. I had my doggy soulmate, Sadie. She was a Chow Collie mix. She loved chocolate mint. We grew it, and I could just pick off one leaf, she would eat it, 2 leaves. Every once in a while she'd walk by and she would just grab it. I tried other things like that, but nope. She really loved chocolate mint, which probably was one of the reasons why she never really had really bad breath. So again, this is a hybrid. This is a form of peppermint. It has those lilac flowers. But you can see in this picture compared to the previous one that it has those really dark veins and it has purple stems. Now, that's not to say that, and it is as strong as peppermint too, but this variation, or this can vary. This is a picture I just took. It's a brand new plant at a nursery, so the leaves were lighter green. It's end of the season. You can still see those red veins though. So again, there can be variations in any of these. But because of the flavor, look, I'm a big fan of Andy's mints. I love it, love it, love it. York peppermint patties. So I should probably perhaps make some more desserts with the chocolate mint that I have. Another tip someone had was they like to put it in with their coffee. Put it in the cup, pour the coffee over, and you have a little bit of a naturally flavored coffee. Apple mint, which is Mentha suaveolens, that has a pink purple flower. These leaves, even though all the pictures they don't really give you scale. These are larger leaves than noticeably larger leaves compared to the peppermint or the spearmint. It is also called woolly mint because you can kind of see in those pictures, especially with the new growth, they look kind of white. It's just they're very, very fuzzy. It does smell a little bit like apple, a little bit like wintergreen. But if you don't really smell an apple flavor or taste it, maybe it'll just come across a little fruity, just a little fruity. So these are really great. And look, I didn't even change that for drinks. So these for drinks and different types of beverages. It's not really used a whole lot for cooking, but it can be. Pineapple mint is a variation of that apple mint. You can see by the Mentha suaveolens, variegata. Pink, white, purple flowers, and these leaves are completely different compared to the other ones that we've looked at. They have that lovely variegation with the white edging and the green inside. They are still furry, but again, with with these, that variation, there can be variation. Look how this is a little bit more pale. If you have a little less light, you'll get a little bit more green, a little less white. But then there's some that can be just have all white leaves. So I don't know if you grow pineapple mint, maybe it's a little bit like the lottery to see what am I going to get. Obviously, just by the aesthetics of it, this is grown a lot as an ornamental, just grown in the landscape. So that's kind of cool. You can intermix some ornamentals with like a pineapple mint, but then you can actually use it. These are, again, this flavor, it doesn't always come through as pineapple. It could be a little bit more minty, but it is primarily used for, for ornamental. Not saying that's the only thing. Thai mint. So there's a Thai basil, and now there's a Thai mint. Mentha arvensis, Thai. So purple flowers. This has a caraway scent. If you're not familiar with that, it's a bit spicy. Darker leaves. You could see even that serration is a bit more pronounced on these. Dark stems. Asian cuisine. And I say likes wet conditions because this particular mint actually likes it a little bit more wet than the other mints. And this can be used in mint sauce. And there's some links that I have. I did this with the basil talk afterwards, like about a week or so afterwards. I haven't finished it, but I found some really great recipes that I can share, and I know one of them had a mint sauce in it. But this is really used in a lot of Vietnamese dishes, any kind of Asian salads, soups, stir fries. Ginger mint. So all of these other mints I have seen, I've gone out to numerous garden centers and I've seen. I have not seen this ginger mint, but I have included it because, I mean, well, just look at it. So it has that variegation too, but a little bit different because it's, you know, like the yellow and green. And it has lavender flowers, a bit more spicy. It's Mentha gentilis, but you'll also see the name gracilis, Mentha gracilis. But this is variegata. So it's really used with fruits, candies, and again, Vietnamese dishes. So this would be a good one, like in pho. You know, just it would complement on its own. It's really not, I mean, it's not very impressive on its own, you know, or if you take a chocolate mint, you know, it tastes really, really good. So this one is not as impressive. So, you know, in dishes like these, candy, or even mixed in with some fruit, you know, that's probably the best way to pair those. Something else that I saw, with ginger mint was chopping it up and mixing it in with softened butter for like a spread. So I don't know, you know, hopefully these will give you some good ideas to try some new herbs and then how to use them, because why grow them if we're not going to use them? And I mean, full disclosure, I'm so bad at using my herbs. You know, it's just the days go by. So Mentha palladium. This is very different because you can see how tiny it is. That's my hand. It grows very small leaves, lavender flowers, and all the other mints, you know, maybe around 2 feet. They can get up to 2 feet tall. Mine don't generally grow 2 feet. But this one is very low growing, 3 inches. So you can use this as a ground cover or between stepping stones. The benefit here is it can tolerate being stepped on, and then, you know, it releases a little bit of that scent. So it does not need a whole lot of pruning. Now, I say low growing, 3 inches, maybe up to 6, but when it gets the flowers, it can be a little bit taller. And here are the flowers. So these are, again, a little bit different from the previous ones because those flowers form like the little globe around the stem. This is not used for anything culinary. There used to be recommendations that you can put them in teas, but you know that oil is really toxic and it can eventually cause liver injury. But it is popular, as you see, for repellents and for flea repellents and for ground cover. Mojito mint, Mentha villosa, even though this is a form of spearmint. Oh man, look, I forgot to take that out. Well, you know, little wabi-sabi. Do you know that name? It's when, you know, purposely there are some mistakes in there, but it adds the beauty. But Cuban mint, these are bigger red stems. It is a native of Cuba. It is, they're a little bit bigger, a little bit sweeter, a little bit milder than than spearmint. Oh, oops, I skipped over one. That's it. So this is the claim to fame with mojito mint. This is one that actually originates from Havana, Cuba, and it is used very commonly in mojitos, which is, you know, like a simple syrup, lime, mint and rum. Yeah, so you could probably use spearmint in there, but you know, this is specifically for that. And I did find a kiwi mint mojito, so I just said, check that out. So that was a pretty interesting take on a mojito. And here are some other mints. Someone said Corsican. So Corsican is another one that is very small. It's a lot smaller, about 1 inch. You know, when you step on it, it can be, you know, it releases that scent. So it can be in pathways. There are various citrusy type ones. That strawberry mint, that is one that is its kind of differentiation is that it is not as aggressive as a lot of other mints, and it does really well in containers. So we are back to this picture. So we've talked about all of these except for the top middle one. So you don't have to put it in the chat, but just take a look around, see if you can identify some of these. There was somebody that said they grew this, so if they can put in the chat if they recognize the top middle one. I would say the key identifier here are those really rounded leaves, and they're not as serrated either, but you can see how round they are. Paul, is there, well, it'll take a few seconds to come through.
Yes, but while we're waiting, there is a question here.
Yeah.
Someone posted, my mint in the summer, the leaves curl up on the top of the plant. What is wrong with my mint? Why does that occur?
I mean, it depends what part of summer, and you know, I don't know without really looking, but I will say in the heat of summer right now, a lot of people have been seeing their mint just not look very impressive. If you don't see insects, if you don't see the rust underneath the leaves, I think this summer and you know, maybe the lack of watering has just caused some stress. My mint has done poorly. I've talked to other people, their mint has done a little bit more poorly. So it could be environmental factors. Any other questions?
Yes, Vanessa had a question about, can you describe Egyptian mint?
Oh, you know what? I think I might have, I don't know much about that one, to be honest. I do know that it's similar in flavor to apple mint, but it's a little bit heartier. Other than that, I've never really grown it. I haven't seen it out, but very similar to apple mint.
Okay, and then I guess in your question, Carolyn said, so you wanted this, the top?
The top middle. Does anyone know what that is?
Someone wrote apple mint, and then actually somebody at was aggressive and said number 6 is ginger mint. So.
Okay, well, I heard someone say that they grew this mint in the top middle, so I thought, but you know what, it's really hard with photos because it, you know, it kind of distorts scale, but that is orange mint. But I put that in there because of how different those leaves are. Yes, definitely ginger. Now that middle picture I took, and that is sitting on Corsican mint, which we did not go over with the photos. And you can see the 3 mints along there. that bottom right one is the chocolate mint. You can see those leaves. And then, of course, you know the mojito mint because you can find it often with a glass of ice and rum. Right? Yeah, no, but the apple mint is the upper left. The mint right below the apple mint, this is very deceiving because, again, there's no context to that. That is actually pennyroyal. It's very tiny. And then the bottom left, I'm not going to tell you what that one is. It has the dark stems. They're, you know, the leaves are more serrated. See if we get any guesses. And then the upper right looks kind of floppy. It almost looks like it's fuzzy like an apple mint, but I think that's just the lighting, and that is spearmint. Any guesses on that bottom left?
Not at this time.
All right. Any other questions?
Yes, can you combine different mints in the same container?
You can if you want them all to eventually taste the same. So they really do cross-pollinate very easily. So you want to keep your mints separated if you want to retain that integrity of the flavors. They just yeah, they get over years they'll just start having less identifying flavors. All right, no guesses on that bottom left?
Chocolate mint?
Yeah, no. Oh, I almost said yes. No, it kind of, because you can't see the leaves, but peppermint with those dark stems and the lance, you know, their pointier leaves. Yep. All right, any other questions before I'm just finishing up after this?
Not at this point, no.
All right. Well, so talking about drinks, I really like this quote, and I didn't know who Waverly Root was, but he was a news correspondent from New England somewhere. But then he turned into a food essayist, and he would write these books. I think the best known one was The Food of France, and I think with that one I had read, it has never gone out of print. And I want to say he was born in like the 1900 something. And maybe lived to like the 1960s. So that was someone new to me. But yes, mint is definitely meant to be crushed. If you know what muddling means, it's like when you put the mint leaves together and you just kind of, especially if it's like a wood, I forget what it's called, and you kind of crush the leaves. When you use a lot of types of herbs, especially mint, you want to release that flavor, and it'll be more easily released if you crush those leaves first. So if you're making a tea or steeping it or just setting it in water, you know, break up those leaves a little bit more. That will cause oxidation and it'll kind of make them look more brown eventually, but you're releasing exactly what you're using it for. And we went over some items all along through, but jelly is another one. There are some jellies, some mints that are really great for jellies, potpourri, chutney. So it's really a wide variety of uses. And again, I am putting together another link and recipe PDF if you do an evaluation for us. I'll Oh, and I forgot. Oh my gosh, I almost forgot. I have 2 mint plants to give away. They're small and they're not doing great because of all the heat and now the rain. But they're definitely popping back. One's a chocolate mint and the other one is spearmint. So when you do the evaluation, we'll have a slot in there for. Although I think I forgot to tell Paul that. But to get those, and we'll pull those maybe like next Friday. And with the evaluations, fill those out, and I will send those PDFs out next week. Going to resources and links, here are some of the resources that Paul put in there in that lemon mint tabbouleh. Paul, any other questions?
Yes. Let's see. One is, you mentioned earlier that it's not recommended to plant mint in raised beds, and I guess they wanted to know why.
Well, mainly because it's just going to grow rampant. So, if you have it in a container, we're going back to that aggressiveness with those runners. They grow under the ground. You saw that one above the pot because it was grown in a pot, but those runners grow underground. So you don't even know that they are spreading until new leaves pop up. If in some situations, in rainier situations or, less ideal conditions, yeah, maybe mint can be kept in check, but you don't want to keep a plant in less than ideal conditions. You want to keep it in ideal conditions, especially, if you're using those plants, in your food. And it just gets way aggressive. People have a very hard time. It'll fill up that whole raised bed, and if the raised bed isn't, very high, then it might spill over. So it's just really hard. Unless you want an entire raised bed of just mint, then look, some people do. The one master gardener, she likes to have one part of her lawn as mint, and she just mows over it to refresh it. So, but just be prepared that, it is aggressive, and then it's very hard. Once it takes root, you plant something 1 year, it's going to be fine. 2 years, it's a little bit better. By year 3, that plant is really starting to get established. So if you end up with a thick bed of mint, it's really hard because you have to get out all those pieces of root, and they're underground. So it just goes back to that aggressiveness.
Okay, another one is propagation tips. This person has repeatedly been unsuccessful. So what would you recommend for propagation?
Well, we had that one slide. So you can do those runners if you already have mint, and you want to create more. Those runners will put out roots below and stems above. So once you establish those, you can just cut it and then plant it up, pot it up. You can also take a stem cutting and put it in water, and it'll grow roots. They are fairly they are fairly easy, but of course, every once in a while, they just give us a little bit of trouble. But yeah, even just cuttings and rooting them in a window.
Okay. How do you deal with powdery mildew?
I've never really had a whole lot of powdery mildew on mint, and a lot of the not saying that it can't, but that probably tells me that those conditions are just too wet. Maybe you have an overhead sprinkler, maybe it's been raining a lot. But leaves do not, all those leaves, going back to prevention, not over fertilizing and not over watering. Those leaves just do not prefer to be wet for extended periods. And if they are, that is introducing things exactly like that.
Okay, and the last one I've got for you is, can you recommend fertilizer for growing mint?
Really, you don't have to be too particular. Just a slow release, complete fertilizer. So Yeah, I mean, with mint, you don't have to be too specific, but slow release will do well in the spring, probably no other time of the year.
Okay, let me see. There's one more snuck in. Oh, just a thank you. So, yep, that
All right.
is it on the questions. So,
All right. So
close us out.
I have 3 takeaways. Keep it contained, try new varieties, and then use it. And then going into my next talk is going to be holiday tree alternatives, which I mean, these may be the best tree alternatives you'll ever see. But that's December 1st. But again, we've got fall coming up in October, and Shannon in November. So thank you. Fill in your survey. We'll give away those mints, and I'll send out that PDF. And if you haven't checked out my basil talk, it was a little bit similar, where I went through the varieties. That is on our YouTube channel. Thank you for joining us.